Okay, today I'm going to show you what I think is a very quick and simple way to weather a coal hopper. This is an AccuRail 55-ton hopper. I've got a number of these, so I need to weather them. First things first, I'm going to take out the coal load, which is made removable. It's just made out of pink foam. That's going to be for another day to show how I make those. It's very simple. So first thing I like to do is take the wheels out so I can paint the faces of the wheels. Normally I would take the trucks off, but some of these AccuRail cars have these little push pins to hold the trucks in, and I found sometimes getting those out, they break. So I'm just going to leave this in. We're going to come back and do the trucks in a minute. We're going to do the wheels first, the face of the wheels. I like to use Vallejo's German Camouflage Medium Brown. I've found that's a good color for older rust. And what I'll do is I'll just put a little dab out on a piece of tape so it's not all over my workbench. And I like to use the green micro brush. It fits perfectly inside the side of the wheel. Like that. You can pretty much cover it with one wipe. And you definitely want to make sure you get the little edge of the rim of the wheel too. And of course you want to keep it off the point that goes in the side of the truck. So I always like to do these first and set them aside so they can be drying while I'm doing the rest of the car. And by the time I'm done with the rest of the car, they're usually dry and ready to go back in the truck. And what we're see, a lot of people like to use these fancy holders to hold 4 wheels at a time, an airbrush, but I think this works pretty good. It's pretty quick. Oops, I got a little bit on the wheel right there, and it's easy to wipe it off. This is a water-based paint that comes right off. If you don't like what you're doing, you can always wash it off and start over. Easy. Okay. But those airbrush jigs for them, they're nice. I've never used them. They look like they work really good. But of course, every time you use an airbrush, there's a lot of cleanup involved. A lot of setup and cleanup. And then you still have to clean off the points of the axle so that they roll right in the frames of the truck. So look, all 4 wheels are painted. That's done. Now the next thing I like to do is go ahead with the rust. Just take a cheap old brush, and what we're going to do is dry brush the typical things that get rusty. I really like to put some rust on that Kadee coupler spring and on the coupler box, a little bit on there on the draft gear box. And what I'll do, I'll come and like dry brush some rust on the trucks. Make sure you hit up the springs. Just give it a little dry brushing. This really brings out the details in the trucks. And while I'm there, I'll do the stirrup steps. And on this end, I'll do the little, this one has like a little lever for a brake. And I'll do some of the steel supports and the brake gears and things and applications that are on this end, the B end of the car. The step for the brake. And some of these support things. And I'll also like to take and kind of highlight the steps and just kind of drag it down to cover it. These are molded on grab irons, so just kind of like to highlight those a little bit, and the pulling pockets, all the little grab irons get just a little bit because these are going to get covered with some coal dust in a little while. But I still like to put a little bit of rust on them for another layer of weathering. And you can see this is just real simple to kind of dry brush on the trucks. I've got like 15 of these cars, all different numbers. So I've made loads for all, and these are the little actuators to open the bay doors. I'm gonna come down at the bottom a little bit. You know, just typically where some rust might accumulate on these cars. And I'll just take it one side at a time. And if you think you have too much paint on your brush, you probably do. So sometimes I'll just kind of brush it off on the bottom sill of the car and then move on to where I want to work. I'll also come and do these little side supports and just give them a little bit of rust. And the little corner support braces on top. Oh, looks like that truck got spun around. So we'll just double touch that up a little bit. All right, and we'll move on to the other side. Like I said, this stuff dries really easy, real quickly. Do that coupler. The other side. Now at the end of this, I learned a new technique that looks really neat on the trucks after it's all finished. And all it takes is highlighting with a number 2 pencil, but we'll come back to that right at the end. Let's go ahead and get these trucks done. Like I said, this is real simple, real easy to do. And if you have a lot of cars to do, it doesn't take long to get them all done. Just a little bit of paint at a time, and it goes a long way. Drag it down the grab irons. And the support ribs on the ends. Draft box. If you get too much, you can always rub it with your finger, and that'll help spread it around a little bit. There's some more on the brake appliances, the B end of the car. Drag it a little down the corners. Now, one other thing I like to do is on the inside of the car, because these things take a beating in service. And just take my brush and take some rust and put it along the inside edges. That's going to show even when the coal load is in it. And if you got too much, just spread it around. You'll probably never ever see that part. And just kind of wipe along the top edges too. Just to give it that little effect. Like I said, a lot of this is going to get covered up. Okay. Now, even if you just went with that, sometimes I'll just give it a little swipe down the sides too. Okay, come back and check the couplers, make sure I got the couplers done good, both sides. This is a real simple technique, and it adds a whole lot to the character of the car and makes it blend in. Of course, with all the others and everything else that's weathered on your train and your layout. Okay, so we're going to put that away. If you look, these wheels are almost dry. But before we get to that, we're going to add the coal dust. And what I use is just plain chalk. Chalk for paper, artist chalk. And I've got this old box here. I just scrape some off with a razor blade. Whoops, and now I broke it. All right. And I've got this dedicated brush. And what I'll do is I'll even start on the inside. And I'll just scoop up some of this dust from the chalk and start scrubbing it on. Especially all around on the inside first. Again, these cars take a beating in service. They're going to get used and abused, covered with coal dust. Probably won't ever see a cleaning in their lifetime. And again, along the top edges. And again, if you end up doing something you don't like, you can always go and wash it off. All right, so that pretty much takes care of the inside of what's going to be seen once that coal load's in place. All right, so next, I'll take my brush and I'll start on the ends. Just kind of dust it on the ends. You know, coal dust is going to get anywhere and everywhere. So get it up in there. We're working in it. This is a fairly stiff brush, so it actually scrubs it in there pretty good, and then you can kind of drag it down. And you can see it's already changing the color of this car. And I'll start at the top of each section. Get some dust up in there. And then just kind of work it down. And don't forget the bottom of the car where it gets unloaded. This does tend to get on your hands a little bit. You could always wear gloves if you wanted to. Doesn't really bother me that much. Okay, and there's that side. Now the other side I'll do a little bit different to give you another idea what can be done. Let's not forget this other end of the car first. Work that black coal dust all up inside here as much as you can. Drag it down, clean it off, but a lot of it's going to stay. All right, now, since we do have this little ridge that runs along the top, maybe sometimes the coal dust may not quite get up in there all the way. So we'll start it maybe about a third of the way down. I've also got this sponge, and you can use the sponge to drag it down. Like I said, I put some rust on these support beams as another layer. And you can see it's not quite as dirty along the top edge, but it's like it fell over the ridge. Doing this also kind of takes care of the really bright white of the lettering. See, I like the brush because you can really kind of rub it in. Okay, and like I said, this is not going to take very long. Try the sponge on this side too, about the bottom 2/3 of the sides. And just drag it down and scrub it in really good. And every time, even though you seems to be doing each car the same way, they all come out a little bit different. All right, so that's pretty much it. So let's put these wheels back in. So the faces of the wheels are good and dry. It only took a couple of minutes. Hope you all can see this okay. All right, good to go. Put the cold load back in. There we go. One used and abused 55-ton hopper car. And that only took a few minutes, and it's ready to go on the layout. All right, come back next time, see what we have for you.